All right. So I want to do a part two on the last one. I want to elaborate a little bit on this topic of intuitive speculation, aka speculative intuition. So, non-scientific way to play with ideas and learning through devices that aren't necessarily factual, but that are very helpful and that expand the limits of possibility and guide like little breadcrumbs through a path of understanding, if that makes sense. So last time I covered a little bit about my history with the band Alice in Chains, and I wanted to follow up with a couple other little vignettes that came after what I described the last time. So let's see here. So as this sort of seed of possibility is entertained, other things can happen that expand and elongate that through life circumstances. So it can be through ideas, it can be through chance meetings, it can be through exposure to certain ideas that are related and that kind of build upon each other. So I mentioned a song in the last video, Down in a Hole, and how I was so taken with this song that I bought the CD, even though I never would have admitted during that period that I even liked the band, and I listened to it with a little bit of a sense of secrecy and only wanted to focus on that song. I don't know what it was about it, but I realized in examining the lyrics of this song, in this latest chapter, that my speculation about music as a potential vehicle to relieve the pressure on the physical geography of a region, it might be describing that. I will speak no more of my feelings beneath, the idea of a hole. Some of these other lyrics, yes, it could be about a person that's in a dark and depressed place. And certainly their music would never shied away from these darker possibilities. But in this new context, it really kind of set up an interesting a toy for thought and thinking and more speculation. So I found a video that was an examination from a singer's point of view, a trained singer and somebody that teaches others how to sing and express, looking at those isolated vocals and what they reveal, not in the context of what I'm talking about, but what he taught actually shed even more light on this. And he talks about Lane Staley's ability that he feels is unique among all singers that he knows, to take a line and have an incredible diversity range of dynamic expression, from the clean to the guttural, to the thing that he does. And a lot of artists of that period, some artists would stake their whole career on this sort of, he calls it like a funneling or a cupping of the tongue in the back of the mouth. But how some would be their sound, but Lane would just interject it with this whole other toolbox. Whether, how conscious he was of it, I don't know. I'm sure to some degree he was, but he's able to point it out as somebody that's trained as a musician and singer, and it's beautiful. What it started to teach me, and I've heard of this before in the context of sound healing. We hear a lot about sound healing, like you go to a yoga studio, you hear the singing bowls, you hear the crystal bowls, you hear the gong, and you kind of lay back and you receive what they call a sound healing. Well, I have an amazing book by this woman, Kristen Hummel, called what is it called? It's called the Self-Healing Handbook, DIY Self-Healing Handbook. Anyway, Kristen, Christan, Hummel, Hummel. And she talks about how you can go into a space where there's been some kind of problem. There's heavy energy in a place, and you can very viscerally tone through your mouth and feel that, and what comes from you is something ugly. And then as you do that more, that you'll get more refined, more clear, less guttural, more beautiful sounds as that space clears, and as it sort of metabolizes through your physicality. And I thought, wow, this is hearing about Lane's ability to do this in just one line of song, or one line of lyric, was amazing to me. And I'm like, okay, so if there was a purging, or if some of the psychic or emotional pressure contained in the land, in the region of Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest, if it was actually being metabolized and cleared to whatever degree through the music of Alice in Chains and through the grunge phenomenon and other musical expressions from the youth at that time, who had far less investment in colonizer ways and were actually kicking against that, or by ignoring it, doing their own thing in a beautiful way. Maybe there's something to this. And then I was listening to, from there I was listening to a teacher by the name of Sabrina Lynn, who does this as she's expressing in like a YouTube video. And she's so passionate, and you hear these guttural sounds coming out of her. She's more aware and shines even more light on this process, but she does it very naturally and organically in her videos. And so I'm including the links below if you want to check out some examples of what I'm talking about. But I was listening to her, really loving this particular video that she was sharing about dark feminine energy archetypes, and but also feeling like I wanted to turn it down at times, because these just in her talk would just go into these like that, and I loved it, but I was feeling like self-conscious. I'm like just because of the neighbors and such. And so I've isolated a couple little, one little piece in particular where she's talking about the archetype of Lilith and describing her energy. So this will lead me eventually to do a video on just this idea of the arts as forms of modern day shamanism. Like, for example, clapping as a way to clear space. The energy transference between audience and performer, and the storytelling that's part of that process, and just how exceptionally wonderful it is that we have, even though we don't speak about it in those terms very often, how wonderful that we have these means of group catharsis and very real healing through a narrative arc. Through being jarred, through being lulled into a place of blissful reverie, all the things that the arts can do for us, enlightening our minds, etc., etc. So very, very, in just awesome territory. I know I won't do it justice, but I do want to share sort of my enthusiasm for that larger topic. Anyway, so going back to this idea of intuitive speculation, it's just really fun to allow myself the ability to imagine wildly and question wildly and just see what shows up in life. I've had so many good experiences with this over the years that, again, this has nothing to do with established fact, and I don't really care about the idea of something being factual, but just there is a kind of magic that enters into my life as I let myself play in this territory. And so, yeah, I think that's all I need to say on this at right now. But thank you for listening. And yeah, stay tuned for more. And if you feel like it, as they say, like and comment, subscribe if you'd like. But having a fun time and a real therapeutic time sharing this stuff. And I don't know how to get rid of these reflections. I guess that's why people go in for the professional setups. I'm not ready to do that yet, but you'll have to bear with my weird reflections. Anyway, thanks.